Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. To the person who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other one as well. And from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the ones who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. But rather, love your enemies and do good to them and lend expecting nothing back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. Stop condemning, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and gifts will be given to you, a good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing, and will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Almost all of us know the story of how, in combat, David, as a young man, overcame Goliath, the giant. By doing so, David was able to save the Israelites from a terrible battle with the Philistines. The victory won favor from the people for David by hatred from King Saul. Saul was convinced himself that David was his enemy and that David would try to take the throne. He did try without success to kill David. And in today's first reading, the tables are turned. David has the opportunity to kill the king. But out of respect for him as the Lord's anointed, he refuses to do so. And David actually forgives the king for his attacks upon him. Now the question is, where do we find an example like that of David? Surely not among politicians who are constantly attacking each other with words and TV commercials during their political campaign. We have an excellent model in the life of our saint, John Paul II. After he had recovered from the vicious attack upon his life when he was shot in St. Peter's Square, one of the first things that he did was to visit his attacker in prison and offer him forgiveness and reconciliation. In 1993, a man falsely accused Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, the Archbishop of Chicago, of having molested him as a youth. The man soon dropped his lawsuit. It would have been understandable if the cardinal had condemned this man in indignation against his dishonest accusation. But rather, the cardinal met with him in order to forgive him. Those two are two extraordinary examples of forgiveness. But we look even beyond those two great men to the person of Jesus himself. Jesus was preaching compassion, forgiveness, and reconciliation as we learn in today's gospel. His teaching is very much opposite of what we hear and we see in our own society. Jesus was practicing what he was preaching. That is why Jesus was able to look upon those who were crucifying him and pray for them. Father, forgive them because they do not know what they are doing. We must be a people who follow the teaching and the example of Jesus. We must be people of compassionate, forgiving, and respectful. We must be that way publicly and privately. For example, some Catholics do not agree with the Pope and the United States bishops who are opposed to the death penalty. The Pope and the bishops see clearly that the execution of a human being goes against the true teachings of Christ. It is time for us Catholics to reject the values that society is promoting or imposing upon us. And as true followers of Christ, embrace the principles of his divine teachings. We must leave to God an appropriate punishment for capital crimes. We are called to follow the teachings of Christ and the example of Jesus and what affects us personally. We don't have to lead a long life to have someone hurt us very deeply, either by saying terrible things behind our backs or by actually doing something which harms us seriously. Those hurts we must not foster. We must banish them from our hearts by offering forgiveness and reconciliation to anyone who has harmed us or hurt us deeply. Every time that we come together to celebrate the Holy Eucharist, we hear those powerful words of Jesus. This is my chalice or my blood, which will be shed for you and for many, so that sins may be forgiven. Receiving Christ in Holy Communion and partaking of his blood shed for the sake of forgiveness gives us the strength that we need in order to be a people of forgiveness and reconciliation, and not people of hatred. We can and we must be like Jesus himself.